Yeah,
Come on.
yeah, yeah.
Come on.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. It's Wednesday, April 22nd, 2015, and welcome to the BCS Experience History, Arts, Culture, Politics in Review and Discussion. I'm Byron C. Saunders, your host with the most. The BCS Experience takes a look at our rich history, African American history. We're going to share with you some known and unknown historical facts and information from the past, and connect the dots on how they have impacted on our present day events, and how they will definitely shape our future as African Americans in this country and around the world. The BCS Experience History, Arts, Culture, Politics in Review and Discussion. This is Internet Radio and will be aired live every Wednesday from 5 to 6 p.m. from the studios of the Iron Metropolis Images on the GoPro Radio Network. You see, I'm really excited about this opportunity for you to talk to you all across the country and around the globe. See, I want you to tune in every week on your computer or your phone. I want you to become a loyal listener, and I personally invite you to lend your voices to this radio talk show to express your opinions on my weekly topics. This is social network radio at its finest. Now, here's the number for you to call in to be part of the discussion. Call 347 884 9839. Once again, that number to call is 347 884 9839. This week's topic, okay? More history, history, history. A celebration of known and unknown heroes and sheroes that need to be recognized by their amazing contributions to the rich cultural legacy of African Americans and the African diaspora. My show is the new Underground Railroad Express. Next stop, your neighborhood. All aboard to freedom and to freedom land. But before we get to all this history, let's start off with something, a piece of history that we need to never ever forget. The date. It's April 22nd, the year 1441, and it's a Friday. You see, on that date, it's remembering Goree Island. This landmass played an important part in the early days of African American history. Goree Island is a small 45-acre island located off the coast of Senegal. Goree Island was developed as a center of the expanding European slave trade. The first record of slave trading there dates back to 1536 and was conducted by Portuguese, the first Europeans to set foot on the island in 1444. The House of Slaves was built in 1776. Built by the Dutch, it is the last slave house still standing in Goree and now serves as a museum. The island is considered as a memorial to the black diaspora. An estimated 20 million Africans passed through the island between the mid-1500s and the mid-1800s. During the African slave trade, Goree Island was a slave-holding warehouse, an absolute center for the trade in African men, women, and children. Millions of West Africans were taken against their will. These Africans were brought to Goree Island, sold into slavery, and held in the holding warehouse on the island until they were shipped across the Atlantic Ocean. They were sold in South America, the Caribbean, and North America to create a new world. The living conditions of the slaves were atrocious on Goree Island. Human beings were chained and shackled. As many as 30 men would sit in an 8-square-foot cell with only a small slit of window facing outward. Once a day, they were fed and allowed to attend their needs, but still the house was overrun with disease. They were naked, except for a piece of cloth around their waists. They were put in a long, narrow cell used for them to lie on the floor, one against the other. The children were separated from their mothers. Their mothers were across the courtyard, likely unable to hear their very own children cry. The rebellious Africans were locked up in an oppressive small cubicle under the stairs while seawater was sipped in through the holes to step up their dehydration. Above their heads, in the dealers' apartments, balls and festivities were going on. But even more poignant and heart-wrenching than the cells and the chains was the small door of no return, through which every man, woman, and child walked to the slave boat, catching a last glimpse of their homeland. When the French abolished slavery in 1848, 6,000 persons, 5,000 of them former captives, were living on the island. Designated by the United Nations Educational, Scientific, Cultural Organization, also known as UNESCO, to be a World Heritage Site, Goree Island, in the 21st century, retains and preserves all the traces of its terrible past. The main slaves' house, built in 1777, remains intact with cells and shackles. The Historical Museum and Maritime Museum, residential homes, and forts, all standing too. The island today has about 1,000 residents. Folks, that's a Holocaust. That's a remembrance to the 20 million Africans who were forced into servitude called slavery. We shall never, ever, ever forget Goree Island and the door of no return. Whew. That's a heavy one, folks. That impact, just a mere thought of all that went on and the atrocities of treating and mistreating human beings like that. My God. Sometimes the history hurts. A lot of times history like that leaves an indelible mark on our souls. And that's why today, 21st century, we still feel that pain no matter what as African Americans and Africans in the diaspora. All right. I want to hear from you. Let's connect the dots here and make sense out of it all. We're talking history today. So you want to call, you want to talk to me, you can call me. 347-884-9839. Once again, that number to call, 347-884-9839. All right, let's get into it. Tonight, you're the listening audience. You're my VIP audience tonight. You're the special call-in and VIP special guest joining me. So we're going to talk about the history. I want you to appreciate our rich cultural history and learn how it impacts on our lives today. We're going to jump right on into it. All right, the date. It's a Wednesday. It's April 21st. The year is 1830. You see, on this date, in 1830, marks the commemoration of the song, The Yellow Rose of Texas. That's right, the Yellow Rose of Texas, da 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 da. You've heard that song down there in Texas. Well, I bet you didn't know this. You see, on this date annually, the Knights of the Yellow Rose of Texas at San Jacinto, Texas, celebrate the song and its history. Narrations inevitably ask the question about all topics. In this case, who was the Yellow Rose? Well, records say the song's original title was Emily, the Maid of Morgan's Point, and the story begins in 1830. That year, James Morgan, an entrepreneur and slave owner from Philadelphia, immigrated to Texas. He came to capitalize on the cheap land and business opportunities in the Mexican colony, which would ultimately become Texas. He formed several partnerships with New York speculators, yet Texas did not permit slavery, so Morgan got around the law by converting his slaves into 99-year indentured servants. Morgan returned to New York in 1835 for more workers for his settlement. One of them was a 20-year-old woman named Emily D. West, an Eastern slave with extraordinary intelligence and sophistication. West was mulatto and possibly from Bermuda, and as was the custom for an indentured worker at the time, she changed her last name to that of Morgan's. By the following year, in the 1836, the War of Texas Independence from Mexico was in full swing. Morgan's now successful settlement, New Washington, was located near the mouth of the San Jacinto River. He freely gave his provisions to the Texas cause. One parcel of land named Morgan's Point ran from San Jacinto Bay, where flatboats were loaded with supplies. Emily West Morgan was in charge of loading those flatboats. On April 18, 1836, General Santa Anna approached New Washington, now mostly deserted. One of those that remained behind, however, was Emily West Morgan. Santa Anna ordered his camp set up on the plains of San Jacinto despite protests from his colonels who insisted the location violated all principles of wartime strategy. Soon, General Sam Houston moved his troops into the woods within a mile of Santa Anna's headquarters. By the afternoon of April 21st, the great final battle for the independence of Texas was on, and the Mexican army was caught completely by surprise. Emily West Morgan survived the battle and made her way back to New Washington. 2 days later, James Morgan, who had not heard of the battle, returned from Galveston, and Emily told him of her ordeal and the outcome of the last great battle. The colonel was so impressed with Emily's heroism, he repealed her indentured status and gave her passage back to New York. Morgan made certain everyone knew of Emily's heroism. He told everyone he encountered, or anyone who would listen, and recorded the story in his journals. Morgan kept a running commentary on Texas affairs with Samuel Swathop, one of Houston's friends in New York City. He also told his story to an English friend and an ethnologist, William Bollard, who recorded the story in every detail. There are accounts from those who were there indicate she did what she could for the independence of Texas. Today, the heroic arts and acts of that young slave woman from New York are still respectfully commemorated by the members of the Knights of the Yellow Rose of Texas, with each spring at San Jacinto. Now that's a story, folks, and I know y'all didn't know about that. The Yellow Rose of Texas. All right, one more before we got to take a break. The date. It's Wednesday. It's April the 20th, and the year is 1853. You see, on this date in 1853, Harriet Tubman, that's right, Harriet Tubman began her work with the Underground Railroad. This was a network of anti-slavery activists who helped slaves escape from the South. And on her first trip, Tubman brought her own sister and her sister's 2 children out of slavery in Maryland. A year later, she rescued her brother and in 1857 returned to Maryland to guide her aged parents to freedom. Over a period of 10 years, Tubman made an estimated 19 expeditions into the South and personally escorted about 300 slaves to the North. And it is a well-known fact that she said she would have freed more slaves if the slaves only realized that they were slaves. Wow. Harriet Tubman on the Underground Railroad. All right. Got to take a break here, folks. So don't go away. I got more history for you, but stay tuned. We'll be right back. You're listening to the BCS Experience on the GoPro Radio Network. We'll be right back after these very important messages.
You're listening to content developed by the GoPro Radio Network, the fastest growing network in the galaxy. GoPro Radio Network. Listen to the voices in your head.
We interrupt this broadcast to bring you a great opportunity. If you have an event, product, service, talent, or something important to say, now is your chance. You can have your very own radio show. Whether you're just starting out or a veteran looking for a professional platform to enhance your presentation and following, the GoPro Radio Network is the premier place to cultivate and share new and exciting content. We can help you grow your audience and keep it growing long after your first broadcast. Now you have a voice. Call 212-696-8562 or visit www.goproradio.com and you'll be amazed at how easy and affordable it is to have your very own professional radio show on the fastest growing network in the galaxy. GoPro Radio Network. Listen to the voices in your head.
We need resistance, struggle, action against the war at home and the endless wars abroad. Come to a major conference of the United National Anti-War Coalition. That's UNAC. Stop racist police violence, end militarism, and the school-to-prison pipeline. See you Friday, May 8th to Sunday, May 10th in Secaucus, New Jersey. It's only 20 minutes away from New York City. Find the links, connect the dots, get the skills. Join hundreds of activists, resistance fighters, and community forces. Participate in workshops, participate in panels. Also, there's lots of culture and music. Register and get all the info at unacpeace.org. That's UNACPEACE.org. Come for the weekend or just a full day. We need your voice. Lend your voice, and all power to the people.
You're listening to content developed by the GoPro Radio Network, the fastest growing network in the galaxy. GoPro Radio Network. Listen to the voices in your head.
All right. We're back on the BCS Experience.
Are you ready for this?
Hey, I'm Byron C. Saunders, your host with the most. We're doing history today. So much history, so much of our African American history that we don't know. That's why my show is important, the BCS Experience. Hey, I'm the new Underground Railroad Express, just like the old woman, Harriet Tubman. I'm her brother, Harry Tubman, okay? All aboard. I'm in your neighborhood. We're taking you to freedom and to freedom land on the Underground Railroad Express. Okay, back to the history, folks. The date. It's a Tuesday. It's April the 20th, and the year is 1858. You see, on this date, Annie L. Burton's birth in 1858 is celebrated. She was a black homemaker and publisher. From Clayton, Alabama, her mother was a house slave who ran away from the plantation after being whipped, but returned after the Civil War when all slaves had been freed. Burton moved to Boston, where she became a domestic servant. In 1888, she married a man who worked as a valet in Braintree. Well, you see, in 1909, Burton published her book, Memories of a Childhood's Slavery Days, and a short biography of Abraham Lincoln. Wow, that's a brave young lady. You need to know who she is, folks. Annie L. Burton. All right, moving right ahead. The next one, Thursday, the date. It's April the 19th. The year is 1866. You see, on this date in 1866, the black citizens of Washington, D.C. celebrated the abolition of slavery. A demonstration of 4,000 to 5,000 people assembled at the White House there. They were addressed by then President Andrew Johnson. Marching past 10,000 cheering spectators, the procession, led by 2 black regiments, continued up Pennsylvania Avenue to Franklin Square for religious services and speeches by prominent politicians. A sign on top of the speaker's platform read, "We have received our civil rights. Give us the right of suffrage, and the work is done." That was back in 1866. And you got to know this, folks. Right after Lincoln's assassination, President Andrew Johnson did everything almost to the T to return the South back to its pre-Civil War slave intentions. But he was overridden. In fact, he vetoed the 14th Amendment and was overridden by Congress. And he survived by 1 vote, impeachment. And today, we owe a special recognition to Ulysses S. Grant, President, who saved the Union. And in New York City, when you come to visit, go visit Grant's tomb. The old joke, who's buried in Grant's tomb? Well, let me tell you, Ulysses S. Grant and his wife are interred there. And when he was buried there, over 100,000 people came to that site to honor Ulysses S. Grant. Wow. That's history, people. I'm telling you, this country is built on the backs of heroes and sheroes, freed men. That day in Washington, D.C. was a glorious day celebrating the abolition of slavery. All right, we keep moving ahead. You want to talk to me? If you want to call me, you can. I want to hear from you. Let's connect some more of these dots. Make sense out of it all. Call me at 347-884-9839. All right, the next one, the date, it's April 22nd. It's a Friday, and the year is 1870. You see, the birth of Lulu Vere Childers in 1870 is celebrated on this date. She was an African-American classic vocalist and educator. She was born in Dry Ridge, Kentucky. She studied voice at Oberlin Conservatory of Music, where she earned her BA degree in music in 1896. She was a teacher at Knoxville College, and in that same year and joined the faculty of Howard University in 1905. She continued to perform singing contralto in a 1908 concert organized by E. Azalea Hackley at the Philadelphia Academy of Music. A close friend of Marian Anderson, she went on to become founder and director of the Howard University School of Music, 1909 to 1942. She accomplished major successes with the Howard Orchestra Band and Choral Society, Women's Glee Club, and Men's Glee Club. Lulu Vere Childers Hall is located in the Arts Building at Howard University. Lulu Vere Childers died on March 6, 1946. A really great woman. My goodness. All right, some more history. We got it. It's on a roll here. The date, it's a Saturday. It's April the 21st, and the year is 1883. You see, on this date, in 1883, the birth of Cap Wigington is marked. He was the first African-American municipal architect, Clarence Wesley Wigington. His name at birth, was born in Kansas City and raised in Omaha, Nebraska. He had a talent for drawing at an early age and won first prize at the Trans-Mississippi World's Fair in 1899. The first job in his career was an intern at a prestigious Omaha architectural firm. After 6 years, in 1908, he had his first commission, a factory in Sheridan, Wyoming. Municipal architects generally don't enjoy the same level of recognition as their peers in private practice. Their projects are designed to serve basic needs such as education, tangible storage, or transportation. Wigington moved to St. Paul, Minnesota in 1913, and 2 years later, after a record score on an entrance exam, he was hired by that city as one of their architects. For the next 34 years, he designed numerous buildings and facilities. Many are Minnesota's historical landmarks, including the Highland Park Tower and the Roy Wilkins Auditorium. Cap Wigington died in 1967. Now, that's a name I know you've never heard, but when you go to Minnesota, folks, you're going to see a lot of his work because he was the architect of note. All right, we're moving ahead. The date, it's Friday. It's April the 20th. The year is 1888. You see, on this date, we celebrate the birth of W. Gertrude Brown in 1888. She was an African American activist for racial justice and the rights of children and women. Although little is known of her formative childhood years, it is certain that Brown's Charlotte, North Carolina education was impacting on her values and career. From 1906 to 1911, then known as Willie G. Brown, she was enrolled at Scotia Seminary in Concord, North Carolina. This was a school founded by the Presbyterian Church to educate newly freed African American girls. Mary McLeod Bethune was a former graduate. The curriculum there was designed for black women in the South to learn and to serve their people by educating them. After graduation in 1911, Brown became a teacher in the Charlotte public school system, where she spent 6 years. She entered social work as a friendly visitor for the Associated Charities for 2 summers, then worked at the Traveler's Aid Desk for another year, all in her hometown. Brown founded the first hospital for African Americans in Charlotte and that city's Sabbath School Association. While working in these capacities, she continued her education. Brown took courses at the Agricultural and Technical College in Greensboro Institute in 1913, at Cheney Institute for Teachers in Pennsylvania in 1915, and Hampton Institute, my alma mater, in 1918. In 1919, she moved to Dayton, Ohio. There, she worked at the Linden Community Center, first as Director of Girls and Women's Work for 3 years, then as Executive Secretary for 2 more years until 1924. She was also Executive Secretary of Federation of Social Services for Negro Women in Dayton. Continuing her education, Brown studied at the Playground and Community Center in Atlanta, Georgia, in 1919, and in Chicago in 1920. In 1923, she received a BS, a Bachelor of Science, from Columbia University. In the fall of 1924, W. Gertrude Brown moved to Minneapolis to head the Phyllis Wheatley Settlement House. While directing the programs there, she took summer courses at Oxford University and traveled in circles of those who were interested in combating racism in America. The Paris Conference of Settlements was held in June of 1926 and attended by 250 delegates from 20 countries. Brown was one of the 30 American representatives who came away excited about the show of peace and cooperation from delegates from around the world. Unfortunately, back in the United States, even among her white colleagues, she would remain a second-class citizen and viewed as having questionable ideas. She resigned as director of the Phyllis Wheatley House in 1937 and moved to Washington, D.C. W. Gertrude Brown died, unfortunately, in an automobile accident in 1939. Wow, what a life, what a career. And I know you never heard of her, but she paved the way for so many who came after her. These are the heroes and sheroes of the African American diaspora. We got to know these folks, because if you don't know your history, you're doomed to failure and repeating the mistakes of the past. All right, I got to take a break. But when I come back, I got even more history for you. So don't go away. You're listening to the BCS Experience on the GoPro Radio Network. We'll be right back after these very important words.
You're listening to content developed by the GoPro Radio Network, the fastest growing network in the galaxy. GoPro Radio Network. Listen to the voices in your head.
What if you can have an entire team of skilled professionals to help your business grow? Admin, accounts, marketing, and more, but only pay for the exact amount of support you need at virtually the same cost you'd pay for one full-time employee. With Virtual Professions, you can. One contact, one number gets you a team of virtual professionals for exactly what your business needs. It's 1-888-315-VPRO. That's 1-888-315-8776. Or online at www.virtualprofessions.net. Virtual Professions Incorporated, because you mean business. We need resistance, struggle, action against the war at home and the endless wars abroad. Come to a major conference of the United National Anti-War Coalition. That's UNAC. Stop racist police violence, end militarism, and the school-to-prison pipeline. See you Friday, May 8th to Sunday, May 10th in Secaucus, New Jersey. It's only 20 minutes away from New York City. Find the links, connect the dots, get the skills. Join hundreds of activists, resistance fighters, and community forces. Participate in workshops, participate in panels. Also, there's lots of culture and music. Register and get all the info at unacpeace.org. That's UNACPEACE.org. Come for the weekend or just a full day. We need your voice. Lend your voice, and all power to the people. We need resistance.
You're listening to content developed by the GoPro Radio Network, the fastest growing network in the galaxy. GoPro Radio Network. Listen to the voices in your head.
All right, we're back on the BCS Experience.
Are you
Hey,
ready for this?
I got history for you. And by the way, you're listening to the BCS Experience on the GoPro Radio Network. Now, we're listener-sponsored radio. That means you help us to stay on the air. I need your support. And the best way to do that, folks, is to go to GoProRadio.com, click on that box that says make a donation. And when you make your donation, whatever size it is, please indicate that you're supporting the BCS Experience. I want to thank you all in advance for sponsoring and helping to support my effort. I've been on the air 4 years here at the GoPro Radio Network. We're the fastest growing network in the galaxy. And boy, do we have some great stuff coming ahead of us. New shows, new ideas. You just need to tune in every week, especially to my show, 5 to 6 p.m. live. Every Wednesday. That's Eastern Standard Time, by the way. So don't be ashamed. Don't be afraid. You want to listen in. You might even want to call us, because I can take calls from all across the world and around the globe. A couple weeks ago, we had a caller from South Africa, from Cape Town. That number to call is 347-884-9839. Once again, 347-884-9839. Oh, by the way, I've got a Facebook page as well. It's called the BCS Experience. History, arts, culture, politics, and review and discussion. Of course it would be called that. You want to leave a message. Let me know how you like the show. You want to become a member of the BCS Experience. Hey, friend it. I'm always growing. I'm expanding. I upload to over 500,000 people every week. And we're appreciating all of those who stand in line to support and listen in. Thank you so very much. All right, back to the history. I've got more history for you. This is one for you, Tylon, you savior Washington. You never know, might be a relative. Okay, the date, it's Saturday. It's April the 21st, and the year is 1906. You see, on that date, Mary Washington was born. In 1906, she was an African American accountant and CPA. Born in Vicksburg, Mississippi, Mary Thelma Morrison was the daughter of Daisy and William Morrison, a carpenter who boasted to friends that his young daughter could read the entire newspaper. When she was 6, her mother died, and she went to Chicago to live with her maternal grandparents. She attended Wendell Phillips High School, where she excelled in math. After graduating from Wendell Phillips High School, Washington took a position at Benga State Bank, one of only a few African American-owned banks in the 1920s. Arthur Wilson, the bank's vice president and Washington's supervisor, took note of her bookkeeping skills and encouraged Washington to pursue her business degree. Wilson himself was an accomplished CPA, having the notable distinction of being only the second African American in the United States to earn his CPA license in 1923. When she attended Northwestern University's School of Chicago Business in the late 1930s, Washington found that she was the only woman in the program and certainly the only black female student. Being light-skinned, however, she was easily accepted as white. As Washington's daughter, Barbara Shepard, a retired Chicago public school teacher, explained, Washington began building her tax season clientele in 1939 and focused on serving the community of small black-owned businesses in her area. One of her early and long-time clients was S.B. Fuller, a self-made millionaire and owner of the cosmetics company Fuller Products Company. Fuller came to rely heavily on Washington's services and advice, and later leased some of his business office space to her to accommodate her growing business. Washington earned her degree in 1941 and was able to serve her apprenticeship with Wilson. When she sat for the CPA licensing exam, again, she was the only woman in the room. In 1943, she became the nation's 13th African-American CPA and the first female of the group to attain her license. She became a leader for future generations of accountants. The firm she began in her basement on the south side of Chicago in 1939, known today as Washington, Pittman, and McKeever, remains one of the largest African-American-owned firms in the nation. As time went by, Washington fostered the development of young African-American CPAs who needed to serve apprenticeships to earn their CPA licenses. Hiring was typically done through references from friends and associates. Frederick Ford, currently the vice chairman of the board of Draper and Kramer, the Chicago-based real estate firm, came to Washington looking to serve his apprenticeship in 1949. None of the big CPA firms would hire blacks, so Mrs. Washington offered to let me come and work. She really opened the way for a number of black CPAs, he said. And according to Teresa A. Hammond, in her book, A White-Collar Profession, African-American CPAs since 1921, the University of North Carolina Press, that was 2002, aspiring young accountants would move across the country to have the opportunity to work for Washington. As a result of her generosity, by the 1960s, Chicago was recognized as having the largest number of black CPAs of any city in the nation, most of who served the city's significant black community. All right, I'm going to pause here for a second. I got a couple of callers on the line. Let's bring them on in, and then I'll tell you the rest of the story, as they say. Good evening. Welcome to the BCS Experience. Who might be calling in? Good evening. Who are you? Welcome. Okay. You're going to just listen to the show? That's okay, too. Is there another caller on the line? Just that one? Very good. Well, let me tell you the rest of the story of Miss Washington, a phenomenal woman. Yes, hello. There you are. Welcome. Who are you?
This is Sandra Dunson Franks from Atlanta, Georgia. How you doing, Byron?
Oh, my goodness, Sandra Dunson Franks. My goodness. Welcome to the BCS Experience, Sandra. Mike,
I do not have a good connection, Byron. I was just commenting. I wrote, Byron, my connection is not clear. Love the music, but it sort of drowned out the commentary you made on Mary Washington, who mentored young African-American CPAs?
Yes.
You seem to offer a plethora of information. This is wonderful, Byron Saunders.
Thank you. Now, Sandra Dunson Franks, folks, just so you know, I haven't spoken to
And you're still going in and out.
Okay.
So it's probably my phone. I don't know if I paid my phone bill or not,
well,
but
if you have your phone
I think this is wonderful.
If you have your
I
phone on
love it.
speaker, thank you. If you have your phone on speaker, that might be causing some of the distortion. However, let me just tell my listeners who you are. This woman, Sandra Dunson Franks, I haven't spoken to her since probably 1983, 84. But Sandra Dunson Franks does one of the finest Harriet Tubman theatrical pieces in America. And so that you know, I gave Harriet Tubman's work was featured earlier in tonight's show, Sandra. So you call on a very special moment. I really appreciate it, and letting folks know that you are indeed still out there doing your thing, and you're in Atlanta, Georgia.
Willikers, I am so sorry, Byron. I'm just catching a little bit in and out. So I'm going to call you again later. I think this is a wonderful opportunity for young people to tune in and really get the real history that they're denied in other educational gatherings. I just love this one. I loved it.
Thank you.
And I'm going to call you again, okay?
Okay. And we really appreciate your calling in from Atlanta, Georgia, which, by the way, folks, if you haven't been keeping up with Atlanta, Georgia, recently, the Atlanta public school cheating scandal, you need to read this one, folks. Teachers were sent to jail. This is an unfortunate situation in which the RICO Act. Now, we got folks who have raped, killed, and been pedophiles who get no time or less time than these teachers in Atlanta, Georgia. We're going to do a story about this sometime down the way because it needs to be exposed. It's part of the pipeline from education, from school to prison, where Georgia itself as a state, originally founded as a penal institution, has one of the highest rates of African American young men and women who do not graduate from high school but end up in the prison system, which happens to be in the state of Georgia, probably the second or third biggest industry, money-making industry in the entire state. Anyway, we're going to get back to Miss Washington, and thank you, Sandra Dunson Franks, for calling in. So we're talking about this wonderful person, Mary Washington, who, by the way, is CPA, an African-American woman as a CPA. Anyway, back to the story. See, in Chicago's tight-knit African-American accounting community of the 1950s and 60s, Washington was certainly a leading figure, having been associated with nearly every black CPA through one channel or another. To draw the community more closely together, Washington threw annual holiday parties at her home, inviting her own employees and the rest of the city's achieving black CPAs to the event, as well as clients, many of whom remained lifelong friends and professional admirers. Lester McKeever, Washington, Pittman, and McKeever's current managing partner and principal and former chairman of the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago, came to work for Washington part-time during the busy tax season and while away from the Army. When he was called back, Washington petitioned for his early release from service but was denied. And when his time in the Army was up, he returned to work at the firm full-time. It came to be known by today's name in 1976. Wow. Thanks to Washington's longtime leadership, the firm she established and that McKeever continues to uphold now audits some of the largest accounts in the area. It is a joint auditor for the city of Chicago and for Cook County, for example, audits several area universities, including Chicago State University and Western Illinois University, and handles the employee benefit plans for electric utility company Commonwealth Edison and printer P.R.R. Donnelly. Mary T. Washington passed away in July 14th, 2005, at age 99. Her 3 daughters, 2 sons, and 9 grandchildren survive her. Now, here's a piece of information. I don't know about this, Tylon. She might be a relative of yours, okay? But here's something I find quite interesting. We know the father of the country, George Washington. But other than George Washington, and I challenge all of my listeners, do y'all know any other Washingtons that are white? Because I don't know any. I know quite a few Washingtons, but I've never known any white Washingtons. So what's up with that? Okay? That's a piece of trivia worth researching. Okay. Anyway, we get back to history. I got to take a break right here. But when we come back, I'm going to close out with a piece of information that you need to know. But you're listening to the BCS Experience on the GoPro Radio Network. We'll be right back after these very important words.
You're listening to content developed by the GoPro Radio Network, the fastest growing network in the galaxy. GoPro Radio Network. Listen to the voices in your head. We interrupt this broadcast to bring you a great opportunity. If you have an event, product, service, talent, or something important to say, now is your chance. You can have your very own radio show. Whether you're just starting out or a veteran looking for a professional platform to enhance your presentation and following, the GoPro Radio Network is the premier place to cultivate and share new and exciting content. We can help you grow your audience and keep it growing long after your first broadcast. Now you have a voice. Call 212-696-8562 or visit www.goproradio.com and you'll be amazed at how easy and affordable it is to have your very own professional radio show on the fastest growing network in the galaxy. GoPro Radio Network. Listen to the voices in your head.
We need resistance, struggle, action against the war at home and the endless wars abroad. Come to a major conference of the United National Anti-War Coalition. That's UNAC. Stop racist police violence, end militarism, and the school-to-prison pipeline. See you Friday, May 8th to Sunday, May 10th in Secaucus, New Jersey. It's only 20 minutes away from New York City. Find the links, connect the dots, get the skills. Join hundreds of activists, resistance fighters, and community forces. Participate in workshops, participate in panels. Also, there's lots of culture and music. Register and get all the info at unacpeace.org. That's UNACPEACE.org. Come for the weekend or just a full day. We need your voice. Lend your voice, and all power to the people.
You're listening to content developed by the GoPro Radio Network, the fastest growing network in the galaxy. GoPro Radio Network. Listen to the voices in your head.
All right. We're back on the BCS Experience. I'm going to bring it home for you. I got a couple of more pieces of history. We're going to try and get them all in. The date, it's April the 20th. The year is 1909. E. Frederick Morrow was born on this date in 1909. He's an African-American businessman and politician. You see, from Hackensack, New Jersey, Everett Frederick Morrow was a minister's son who graduated from Baldwin College in 1930 and was employed by the National Urban League and the NAACP as a field secretary before entering Army service during World War II. After the war, he obtained a law degree from Rutgers University and worked for the Public Affairs Division at CBS. He was an advisor on the Business Affairs and the Commerce Department before joining Eisenhower's staff as administrative officer for special projects from 1955 to 1961. This was an important person who served on the president's staff at the White House. He was the sole African American on staff dealing with racial tensions related to integration. Morrow faced difficult personal and professional struggles at the White House, as you can only imagine. The Supreme Court's landmark Brown versus the Board of Education ruling, the Montgomery bus boycott, and the Little Rock crisis were the backdrop for Morrow's White House years, on a staff with a civil rights policy that was at best cautious. Morrow was often frustrated and angered. Anyway, Morrow campaigned for Richard Nixon's unsuccessful election bid in 1960 and 64, and he became the first black corporate executive working for Bank of America. All right, moving quite ahead. The date. It's April the 21st. The year is 1910. You see, on this date marks the founding of the National Urban League in 1911. The National Urban League is a nonprofit social service and civil rights organization with headquarters in New York City. The National Urban League grew out of the 19th century black migrations when the U.S. Supreme Court declared its approval of segregation in the 1896 Plessy versus Ferguson, what had been a trickle of African Americans northward turned into a flood. And at the time, and the degree of difference between South and North, lay opportunity that African Americans clearly understood. But to capitalize on that opportunity, they would need help. That was the reason for the Committee on Urban Conditions Among Negroes was established on September 29, 1910 in New York City. Anyway, it went on to become the National Urban League as we know it today. Amazing. It started back then. Okay, I got a few more minutes left. One more piece of information and history important to those in the 21st century. Here we go. The 20th century. The date, it's April the 19th. It's 1969. It's a Saturday. You see, on this date in 1969, more than 80 members of the Afro-American Society took over Willard Straight Hall, Cornell University Student Union. The takeover had been prompted by a reprimand of 3 black students for an incident the previous December and a cross burning. Both incidents occurred the previous day in front of the Black Women's Cooperative and other cases of alleged racism at Cornell University. A deal was eventually cut between protesters and Cornell administrators, and the students left the building a day later. 5 days later, a counter-protest occurred when 16 professors decided not to teach unless order at Cornell was restored. Wow. We've gone through some stuff, folks, in this country. Never to forget. You can never forget the history. And here's what it is. I got my little last piece here, the BCS Experience Blog News Snaps. Racism in America. Listen to this. Racism in America as seen through a prism that narrows the focus to a singular reality. That reality is this. America has a major problem that is a virus worse than anything mankind has ever witnessed. Yes, even worse than the anti-Semitism that Germany exacted on Jews, Gypsies, and Africans during their Nazi regime. America, no justice, no peace, from sea to shining sea. And until then, we got a problem, folks. It is our largest threat to our national security. Forget about ISIS, forget about Al-Qaeda. I'm talking about racism right here in our own homeland. That's our number one problem here in this country. And until then, until it's erased, we got a problem. We got to stand up. You got to get involved. You got to know your history, because it's your history that's going to lead you to freedom and to Freedom Land. Well, folks, the BCS Experience. This is GoProRadio.com, your social network radio's live talk radio show, produced and sponsored by Iron Metropolis Images. Tylon Eusebio Washington is producer, and I want to thank Brian and Kobe, who are back there in the booth as my engineers. Y'all doing a fine job. Thank you, guys. You're making me look great. A special thank you to the Jazz Lounge Project and Andrew Julian Myers for my fabulous show's theme music. You see, your support of Iron Metropolis Images is important to us, and there is a wonderful documentary that my producer, Tylon Savior Washington, has made, and it's available for purchase. It's entitled Disappearing Voices, The Decline of Black Radio. You can purchase it right now. Just go to disappearingvoices.com and buy it. It's really important that you have this information in your library, in your personal library. It's only $19.99, and if you tell him you heard it on the BCS and heard about it on the BCS Experience, he'll even autograph it for you. All right, let's got to keep moving forward. Tune in next Wednesday when my show, the BCS Experience History, Arts, Culture, Politics, and Review and Discussion, will be back on the air from 5 to 6 p.m. Coming up next, We the People with Sonny B. Sutherland from 6 to 7, followed by the Earl Morgan Hour from 7 to 8. Then check out The Good Life from 8 to 9 with Adiaga and Shay. And then stay tuned from 9 until 10 for the Sexy Party Show hosted by Mr. Lucario and Pavion O'Connor. And closing the Wednesday night schedule is Roll Up. You know, twist one up, 10 p.m. Anyway, now on Fridays at 9 p.m., check out the In the Booth right here on the GoPro Radio Network. Hey, listen. I'm Byron C. Saunders, and it's been all about the BCS Experience. Join me next Wednesday when my really very special guest will be none other than Reverend Dr. DLC Boyce with Let's Talk You. We're going to help you overcome your stumbling blocks, and it's free, folks. Tune in next week from 5 to 6 p.m. Anyway, until then, I'm out of here. For the moment, peace and love always.